Welcome CSE 235, Advanced Web Applications, to ex2. This is called Date Output. This will be very introductory, maybe a little boring, but we'll introduce JavaScript in little baby steps in here, and we'll also get used to doing it in Replit. We'll also get used to some output, and we'll start off with the date object in JavaScript. Now, what that is, if you go to W3 Schools, I'm going to go to W3 Schools and go to JavaScript, you will see JS Dates down here, and we're going to construct a new date that it has built in an object, kind of like the math object in Python, which has built-in methods already. We're going to use those just to output a page and get used to using some JavaScript without creating everything from scratch. Now, another place you could go, if you go all the way to the bottom and just go to JavaScript objects, bottom of this left side here, and they have different objects. If you just go to date, you'll see all the objects. You'll see math, operators, all this kind of stuff. If you just go to date, we'll work with this section here because it shows you how to construct a date, how to use the different methods and pull information from a date and so on. So that's what we're going to do. So again, JavaScript, go all the way down to the bottom and go to objects, and we'll just go to date. So we'll keep this open for reference as we work. I don't always memorize everything, so I'm a little rusty with JavaScript compared to Python. I've been working with Python more over the past couple semesters. We're going to go back to Replit, and you're going to create a repel. Now, let's try to do this every time. I'm going to create a repel, and we're going to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And for the name, I'd like you to do this. Just do 235, and then dash, and then call it ex2. And you could just put date and then put your initials. So just use dashes in here. I'm going to put CJ because I'm using this CJ account. I'll put CJH even just in case there's another CJ in the class. So the reason I'm putting 235 first, and you don't have to put CSC, is just because some people are taking 230 and 235 at the same time, even though it's best to take one and then take the other. If you are taking them at the same time, at least you could keep your repels separate, because you might have your 230 and you might see different things, ex2, ex1, they might look all the same and get confused. So if you put 235 here, hopefully that'll keep it separate. So I'm going to do that, make sure it's the HTML, CSS, JS template. And when this opens up, you're going to have your skeleton HTML, you're going to have some CSS, which you don't really need, but you could just ignore it for now. If you want to get rid of this, you can, or you could leave it there. Your script, there's nothing in your JavaScript. This is an external JavaScript file right now. We're going to work with external JavaScript. We can put JavaScript in style tags in here, and I just want to point this out too, that there's two things going on here in the body. There's actually just a word, hello world, and it's not even a paragraph or H1 or anything. It's just hello world. And it's just displaying here hello world just to have something on the page so it's not white. And I'm going to take that off. I don't want that. We don't need hello world on there. And this is the script that's pointing to that file. So any code we put in this script.js is going to get run through this in this script tag. Now keep in mind you can also put scripts themselves in script tags. There's another one down here. And again, this is script source, and it's just pointing to a file. It's not an actual writing script in here. So we're not going to write script in here. We're just going to write our script in our script.js. But there's another script tag here, and that's putting, I think, the Made with Replit banner. I think, is it that thing? I'm not sure. But it shows up on the bottom right of the page. It might be that thing. Let's just get rid of all this for now. Yeah, and that got rid of that. That's just that little badge that's down here. And I'm even going to backspace and tab this so we have it set up like our tabs elsewhere. And typically the script can run in the body, can be in the head. A lot of times they'll tell you to put the script at the bottom of body so that everything loads first before the script. So if you're referencing things from the page, that you have them all load first before you're doing things, especially if you have images and things like that. So that's why a lot of times they'll put this at the bottom of the body. And that's okay. We'll just put this here for now. I'll put some space, and we'll just talk about output. Even before we output anything on here, we'll just mention that you can output to the console log or console log. For some reason I say console. It's console log. Now you might be like, well, where is it? Is it the shell? It's not the shell. You can even close up the shell, and it's not in WebView. And if you go here and if you say, oh, I want to open up the console log, you'll look here and you won't see it. And you'll be like, where the hell is it? I know it's here somewhere. Now, you'll see a console log when you open up a page, too. Even if I open up this in a new page. So I'll open it up in a new tab, there's nothing here, but if I inspect, or inspect, I don't know why I'm putting weird emphasis on parts of words. If I inspect here, there is a console here where you can go. Now there's an error. It's just a favicon error, and that's about it. You're not seeing any JavaScript. There's nothing going on here. We're not really running anything, but this is where you can see JavaScript as well in the console here. Just pointing that out. Now there's not a whole lot to look at right now, but I'll leave this open. And if you want to print out something in the console, like anything, you could just go here and just write basic. I'll just use var to start. I'll say var x equals 3. I'll just make a little expression here, and then I'll make another one that says var y equals 2 semicolon, and then I'll just put var z equals, and I'll put x plus y. So that should be 5, right? So z should be 5. So if I wanted to output z, I could go window dot console dot log and then put what you want in here. So I'll put z here, and I'll put a semicolon. Everything in JavaScript should end with a semicolon. So what this should do is it should output to the console. Now, where's the console? Well, let's run and see. I'm not seeing it. Here's the console. There's the console. There's our output. So if you ever want to run it, just use this little wrench here. I know it's hard to find sometimes. So that's just like you would see when you use inspect, but this is down here. So if you change any of these numbers, var, you make it 8, our output now should be 11. So these are basic expressions doing basic math, just like any other programming language. And it's just a way to output. It's almost like Python when you print and you're just printing to your shell or your output area like you normally would, unless you're using turtles or something like that that has a GUI. So that's just basic console log output. You can also print to your page too. If you want to print out to your page, you need to reference your page. So in here, I'll go to my page, I'll go into body, and I'll just put P, and then I'll use an ID. Now you can use Emmet shortcut. You could just use the £, and I'll just put display. I'll use that. Sometimes W3 Schools uses demo. When you go here, they'll use demo as the ID to print out. You could use demo too. I don't care. You could. That's even shorter, so I'll use demo instead of display. Now, if you type it like that and hit tab, it'll make a paragraph with an ID name of demo and a closing tag, and then there's nothing in there. We don't want anything in there because we're going to output to there. Now, one way to output to there, again, these are the kind of the main ways we'll do it, and we'll also show alert, but we'll do another output, and we'll do document, and you could click on it, dot, and we'll use get element by ID. And that's the easiest way to get elements. There's class name and tag name, but there's sometimes you have to put the index number in there for some of these. So ID is usually the easiest, and it works backward compatible with browsers a lot easier. So we'll use that in the beginning. So what is the ID? Well, the ID is demo. So let's put it in quotes. Make sure you put it in quotes. And then we'll write with something called innerHTML. Now there's something called document write, but we'll just do this so we can write it right to our page right now. And then we'll put equals. So what are we going to output? Well, if it's a variable, we can just put z. If it was a string, you'd have to put quotes. And if it was both, you'd have to concatenate. So if we just put the number, I could just put z, and I'll put a semicolon. And what it should do is just write 11 on our page. And it'll write it in the console too, because this is going to the console. This should be going to the page as long as we have everything right. As long as we have a paragraph, an ID of demo, it should go there. So let's run it. There it is. 11's there. See, I don't even have to read it up here. There's 11 there, and there's 11 down here. So that's what's happening with our JavaScript. Now, how else can we do it? We could also do window.alert. There's alert. You've seen these alert things, and people generally don't like these, but we can put z here as well. And I'll put a semicolon. And now we'll run it. And there's our alert. And there it is on the page. And there it is in the console. So 3 ways we could kind of output JavaScript. And again, we're just doing a number right now. Now, if we wanted to put text, we could put like the number is Z or whatever. And here's a nice thing you could do. Instead of trying to add to all of these things here, you can do var, and I'll just put let. We're going to use let when you use a variable that can be changing. So these could all be let, and we use const when it's going to be a number or anything, any kind of variable that's not going to change. So this is kind of getting deprecated. People don't use this as much, although there's nothing wrong with doing it. But let's just try let. It's just the same thing, really. And I'll say let, and I'll put s for string, or I'll put st. And the string will be, in quotes, the number is, and I'll put a space. So whatever is after it will have a space. And I'll just let that as a string. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine a string and a number. Now, this is our variable, this is a string. So what we can do here, instead of like putting this whole string in here, I could even put it in here in the console log or the console log. And I'll just put, that way I don't have to type all these quotes. I could just put st plus. Let's see if we can do that. That should concatenate it. And let's just see if that works first. The number is 11, and that works. And we're concatenating in there. Now we're not putting a period here. And then you could do this here. You can do st plus. You can put a space on either side of the plus if you want, if that looked better. And I just find that easier than combining a string and a variable. So now we're just combining two variables like that. So it's adding the string and then displaying the variable number. So we'll run that. Okay, there it is there. There the number is 11. There the number is 11. And then finally for the alert, we could do the same thing. We can do st plus z and run that. So a lot of times you could use variables just to make things a little easier in terms of what you're writing. Sometimes you could make a variable that represents document.get element by ID, and that way you don't have to write such long statements in your window and keep doing that every time. So again, 3 ways to output: console.log, innerHTML, and that's writing it to the page, and you do have to target something on the page to write it to. So we're targeting by ID, and we're giving it an ID name, a paragraph. It could be an H1, it could be whatever. You could target images, whatever. We'll do all kinds of things. But just for now, just real basic stuff, we're doing that. And then also this alert. And a lot of times those alerts come up as an alert, like you must fill in this, you must fill in that, just like I showed on that previous form. So just a couple things that's going on here. Also, when you use comments, and I'll just type here output methods. To make it a comment, you just have to put 2 slashes in front of it, and it should show up in green. If you have a lot of stuff, you could highlight it and do command / or command ? Or control ? control /, and that way you could comment it. And same way with other comments, you could comment things out. You could put notes to yourself in here just so you know what things are. You could break things up a little bit so your code is easier to see. You could say this is variables, this is output, and so on. It's just a way to be a little bit more organized, because really this is a programming language, although it's interacting with HTML, and it'll also be interacting with style.css. So it gets a little confusing in that sense. When you work with Python, you're just working with Python pretty much. But in here, you're kind of juggling these files around, which can be a little confusing. And it can be a little, more work putting things in there. But that's just the way it is for now. And again, we're just doing things front end. Eventually, we can work things on the back end. But everything we're doing is really front end right now. We're not doing anything back end. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to work with the JavaScript date. So let me do that in part 2. So this was just kind of the output. In part 2, let's start working with the date a little bit, so we have something a little bit more than just adding together 3 and 8 basic math, and we'll do that in part 2 coming up.